have to discuss Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is no piece of cake. Now, I'm a skeptic by nature. It's hard to believe, but it's true. I'm not one of those people that just say, you know, tell me any airy-fairy metaphysical thing under the sun and I embrace it. But what I've learned over time is there are certain systems and schematics and vibrational fields that in this cosmic timepiece that work in a certain way. And once you understand how they work, you can ultimately adapt yourself to those inner workings. So, does the music of the spheres, do the energies of the planets have an effect on us? They do. If a dead asteroid like the Moon is able to pull the tides on Earth and in its full energy field turn we human beings, including a few animals, into raving lunatics, and that's a dead asteroid, imagine what the healthy planets that are very much alive, like Jupiter, the vacuum of the universe, Saturn with its ice rings, the asteroid belt, the red planet, Mars, the glowing pearl Venus, and that liquid silver Mercury. Just imagine what it's doing to you and me. When Mercury goes retrograde, all electronica goes verklempt. It's obvious that it happens. Just this week, myself, we bring both the cars into the station, oil changed, tires rotated, everything's hunky-dory prior to the Mercury retrograde. Within the day of the Mercury retrograde, my oil light goes on, her car won't start, and everybody's putting on Facebook, it's the end of the world. Bring all canned foods near a shelter, Mercury's retrograde, what are we going to do? In fact, one of my favorite gal friends, a Gemini, Mercury's her ruling planet. Mercury rules two signs, by the way, which is quite unique, Geminis and Virgos. But the day of the retrograde, she fell and hurt herself very badly, an older gal. I feel so awful for her, but I can't tell you how many people have hurt themselves. What's going on Facebook is insane, and you guys on Facebook know. It's just like, what on earth is going on? You cannot cut and paste anything. You can't get onto YouTube. Anything electronic is just being simply denied via Mercury retrograde. The irony is, Mercury is not even really going retrograde. It just appears that way from Earth. It has that appearance, but the very appearance of it has an effect on us. So this is a planet that rules communication, and in the age of Aquarius, particularly electronica, virtual communication. But I have seen year after year after year the patterns of retrograde and how they affect us, sometimes in an ill-dignified fashion. Now, Mercury retrogrades 4 times a year, and you have to take into account it's attempting to move into retrogression, its retrograde stage, and then when it moves into its direct phase. So roughly half of every year of your life is a Mercury retrograde, therefore half of your life is in a Mercury retrograde. Why Gewalt? So you can either work with it or you can't. If you're going to, though, deny it, go ahead. But of course you'll be broken down in your car on the side of the road calling AAA, who won't be able to get there because they broke down too. So really there's not a whole lot you can do per se to not let Mercury retrograde infiltrate your life, but you can sort of just, I guess maybe the bigger lesson is, you can surrender. You can kind of just go with it. You can kind of trust sometimes that maybe, you know what, it's happening for a reason. So it's a bit of a pain, it's true, but you have to kind of just trust it. It's going to happen anyway. And you know, sometimes these retrogrades actually, though, offer their rewards. For instance, some people are going to be having surgeries in a retrograde. I'm going to be having one myself. So doctors are going to go back in and do reparations on something. So when Mercury's in its retrograde state, that's actually a good time to go back and attend to something that actually does indeed need to be addressed. So in that case, it actually works out. I was a Cub Scout and I was a Boy Scout. Be prepared. So essentially, the energy field is, if you know the Mercury retrograde is going to come 4 times a year, and the next one's going to be coming around the bend, but right now we're videoing this right during a retrograde. I wonder if you'll ever see this video at all. But yeah, being prepared matters. So we did have all that work done on the vehicles prior to the retrograde because we're aware of the, again, cosmic timepiece. but that didn't stop the engine light from coming on, and it didn't stop Nancy's car from not starting. But if you do some of those things that at least elicit some sense of preparation, you're at least more likely, though, to not suffer all the ill effects of just Mercury retrograde gone mad by just saying, I know the refrigerator's on the fritz, I know that light bulb is about to blow or power surge. If you're just not going to do anything about it at all, then you know what? Your life is just Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, because Mercury's just going to simply fuel that. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. Now, there are those of us that are born under a Mercury retrograde, and that's fantastic, because if you're actually born in a retrogression, I find those clients of mine that I read, are not as affected by the retrograde. So again, some are insulated from it. We're not all that lucky. Here's one thing, though, I generally would say, though, not to do. When it came even to buying my home, I was supposed to sign the papers during a Mercury retrograde, and I pushed for not doing that, just to be on the safe side. So when initiating new projects, I might suggest a Mercury retrograde is not the right time to do it. But again, when you want to, though, return to do reparations, revisit something, revise something, retrogression actually is the perfect time to do it. Other planets retrograde as well. I don't want to get you totally frightened, but Mercury is just one of many that do that. So you go back and you attend to things, and of course you do what you got to do in life anyway, which is you just have to go with the flow, go with the cosmic timepiece. In that mindset and under a retrograde, let's do a read. So the vibes say this: the retrogression and its influence, and we're right smack dab in the beginning of it, almost in the middle, pseudo beginning middle, says this: the first vibe that comes through during a retrograde puts us in this vibrational field. It's interesting. Well, in just a simple Daniel-esque fashion. It's a painting of my sister-in-law Barbara, a Gemini. It's funny, because if I was to say who in my life is the most affected by and freaked out by Mercury retrogrades, it's Barbara. Flips her out. So she's not that fond of it. So it's funny that she appeared. But the notion is, the vibration itself is commitment. So one has to think in terms of, like we said before, when do you sign a paper? Maybe not during a retrograde. But when do you commit to going perhaps back into fixing something up, fixing a hole where the rain gets in? Mercury retrograde. Okay, so that's a nice vibe. Commitment. When to commit oneself, understanding the rituals of life, the changes of life, and how to move with the different seasons, and like a willow, bend to those energies. Nice vibe. Let's take a look at number 2. Number 2, energy during a retrogression, says this. Mercury retrogression says this: okay. Now the vibration is interesting because it says you may make a decision. You may do this. You may go west. My painting of May West. You may go west. So it's not saying do this now. It's suggesting life is all about choice. You may do this. In fact, a Mercury retrograde is even a good time to consider what you will do when Mercury goes direct. The third vibe then says this. So they're humming along quite nicely. They're certainly helping us further understand how to navigate and negotiate a regression. The final vibe of the triptych says this. It's interesting. Words that are not spoken. Lips are sealed. You know what, frankly, during a Mercury retrograde, I would suggest just that. You don't want to be bold. You don't want to start saying something that when it goes direct, you're sorry that you said it. Remember what Mercury rules: communication. So you could say something idiotic. It might be best to do exactly what this painting suggests is, you know what, don't say it yet. Wait till it goes direct and your thoughts are more clear, and you're able to then ultimately say to everyone what needs to be said, and you don't look like you're half-baked. One last thing though. During a retrograde, I might even suggest a crystal. Hematite is a nice crystal to have during a Mercury retrograde because it's grounding, focusing and stabilizing. That said, have a happy retrograde.